I'm back with Ian to hear more about his time with Dad in their college days back in the 60s. I find out why Dad might not have gone back to Ghana to see his family, but also discover a picture that throws everything I knew about Dad into question all over again and might have implications for me that I was never expecting. The first Christmas that my dad had in the UK, he spent that at Ian's house. Ian told me when I met him that it was so unusual for a black person or an African person to be staying in town that the local newspaper came down, took loads of pictures and ran an article in the paper just to say that he was there. So that kind of gives you a good impression of what life must have been like as a sort of random African person living and studying in Wales in the 60s. Dad did talk more about his family situation when he first came to Ghana in the 60s. And what Ian thinks is that when Dad moved over in 64, there'd just been a coup and the leader was a guy called Nkrumah. And my granddad, my dad's dad, worked for this company called the Ashanti Gold Corporation. And when Nkrumah came into power, he pledged allegiance to this guy, Nkrumah. But then 2 years later, he was deposed and it all fell apart. And it looks like things might have gotten really difficult for my granddad and therefore the family. And potentially that's why Dad didn't come back after college finished in 66.
Peter's father had moved into the Nkrumah's party because it had become a one-party state. That was the excuse for the coup.
Right.
You know, and so he'd left from Ashanti Goldfields, a really good job, and he'd moved into the CPP, and all of a sudden there's a coup. CPP is abolished. It's illegal. What the hell does he do? Peter's stranded. You know, he can't get back. He's got no source of linkage or support back there. He's a great Nkrumah supporter, as his father was, and probably that's why, you know, he found himself more than stranded. He probably ideologically thought, well, I don't want to go back to a military dictatorship.
Right.
But however, at the time when we talked politics, which we did all the time in those days, he was always very rational.
Mm-hmm. I also spoke to Ian about Dad's mysterious wife, Irene, to see if he'd known her when they were together or might know anything that could point me in the direction of where she was now. After my dad died, I found a marriage certificate to another woman completely separate, a woman called Irene Faith Deborah, who was a Ghanaian woman, and they got married in 1974 in Birmingham.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, well, neither could I.
This is an insight into my friend that I never ever would have imagined. I cannot believe, because you only know someone in a window.
Yeah.
You only know someone for a particular time, and you formulate your opinions and your feelings towards them.
But it seemed like Ian knew as much about their relationship as I did. Nothing. So we've just been to see Ian. Been looking forward to seeing him for a while now. Was quite nervous about what it was going to be like and what I was going to get from him because, well, I had no idea what he knew, if he was going to be able to like shed any light on the sort of person my dad used to be. But it was actually really, really great. It was so nice to hear that someone cared about him so much. But I don't know, there's also a bit of like there's a bit of like resentment under there, a bit of anger, I think, because it's when he talks about like my dad wearing his like traditional clothing that was so important to him, and talking about like ancient Ashanti traditions and all the things in Ghanaian politics that he was really interested in and that he cared about. I never got any of that, like nothing. He didn't talk about where he came from, he didn't talk about his family, he didn't talk about Ghana or tradition or anything. And so, I mean, and I never thought to ask as a kid, but as you get older, I think there's something in you that draws you to where you've come from, and you're more interested in your parents because you start to see them more as people, and to know where they come from kind of helps you understand where you came from. And yeah, it feels a bit like he kind of robbed me of a part of my heritage by never sharing it with me, and now it's too late in some ways because he's not around to share it with me himself. So I'm having to do all this just to sort of get to the bottom of where he came from and kind of therefore where I come from to an extent. So yeah, I am fascinated and interested and happy and sad and angry and confused and questioning things all at the same time. But I just hope the further I sort of delve into this, the clearer things start to become, but we'll see. Yeah. One thing that was really interesting was that Dad did come to see Ian at some point in the late 80s, I think. And Ian says he remembers that Dad came with 3 kids when he turned up. Now I know that I have a half brother called Christopher, and that Christopher has a brother who I'm not related to called Dean. And I knew that those 2 kids were involved in Dad's life. But the third one, that's a mystery. So is that half brother? I don't know. So now there's this extra thing that I need to look into, because who is this kid and am I related to him? Was he Dad's? Who knows? So that's now another thing that I need to do a bit of research into. Guys, thanks for watching. There'll be a new episode out next Friday. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one.